Good morning everyone and welcome here to St James and Sunday School in an empty classroom. I'm so glad you could join me here, and it's good to hear that you've all been there. I know that some people did Easter Sunday in their pyjamas, which I'm very proud of you, and I know that some people dressed up, and that's great too. It was really good to hear what you were all up to from those of you who let me know this week. We have been busy here at church. It's now the Easter season, so even though there's nobody here, we've changed some things up in church. We've got the beautiful gold and white altar cover on, and we've got rid of all of that purple that we had in Lent, and we are now in the season of Easter. So our story continues today, and when I started looking at it, it reminded me of some of these faces that you did the other week. Did this just a while before we finished Sunday school here, and we were talking about how we felt, and people made the pictures of different faces and they put different emotions to them. This one says it was stern. Here's a sad face and a surprised face. This one's happy. This one's questioning. This one's curious. This one's concerned. And this one's very, very sad. And another happy face and an angry face. We make different faces to show how we feel very often. We can be sad. We can be happy. We can be uncertain or curious. I know we came up with some great words when we were doing these about emotions. Maybe you can make a face at somebody right now and have them try and guess what you're feeling. Go on. Surprise. Okay, let's look at our story. So, when we finished our Easter story, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary had found Jesus and he was alive, and they ran back to tell the disciples. Must have been confusing, mustn't it? Could we make a confused face? The disciples were in the upper room. They were kind of hiding, because Jerusalem wasn't a good place to be for them right now, because they'd seen Jesus die and people knew that they were his friends. So they were a bit scared of the authorities, and when the women told them, they were, wow, amazed, but also, a bit worried. But it tells us in the book of John that evening, while the disciples were behind closed doors because they were afraid of the Jewish authorities, Jesus came and stood among them. He said, "Peace be with you." And after he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. And when the disciples saw the Lord, they were filled with joy. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you, and as the Father sent me, I am sending you." Then he breathed on them. Receive the Holy Spirit. Wow. The disciples saw Jesus, and they could believe that he had risen from the dead. But there's a problem. One of the disciples, Thomas, wasn't there when Jesus appeared to the other disciples in the upper room. Don't know exactly where he was, but maybe somebody had to go out to get some groceries or look after jobs that needed doing. So he didn't see Jesus. So when he got back and they all said, Thomas, Thomas, you won't believe it. Jesus, he was here. He was a bit confused. You do a confused face? He was a bit perturbed. He was a bit disturbed and worried. I don't know, I believe it, he said. I don't know. And he said, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and I see the wounds in his side, I won't believe that he came back. So, 8 days later, the disciples were again in the house, but Thomas was with them when Jesus appeared. Jesus entered and he said, "Peace be with you." And then he said to Thomas, "Look at my hands and look at my side and put your disbelief away. Believe in me." And Thomas responded, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus said, "Do you believe because you see me? Happy are those who don't see and yet believe." What I love about this story is that I understand it was hard for Thomas. I understand that Thomas was confused. But what I love also is that Jesus doesn't tell him off, doesn't say, "Well, you're no good if you don't believe." He says, "Look, I'll show you. And when you've seen, you'll believe." And that's what happens. But Jesus also remembers that we won't ever see Jesus with hands and his side, and we won't see him just as he's been resurrected, because that happened long, long ago. But he said that we can still believe. We can be happy to believe. But what I love, love, love the best is that Jesus doesn't tell Thomas off. He says it's okay. He says it's okay for Thomas to have questions. It's okay for Thomas to want more and to talk to him and to want to see him. And that's what it's like for us. We can have questions. We can say, "I'm not sure about something that I heard at church or something I read in the Bible." And we can ask people and we can ask God and we can say, "Help, I need to understand this a bit more. I'm not sure about it." And that's okay, because we get to know God better that way. And we get to learn about God that way. It's like having a friend who you ask questions and you talk to, and the better you get to know them, the more you can like them, the more you can love them. And that's what it's like with God. And Jesus reminded us of that when he said to Thomas, when he came back and he saw Thomas. So it's okay to have questions. It's okay to find it hard to believe something. But God's there to help answer those questions. So now we know that the disciples have seen Jesus, the women have seen Jesus, and even the disciple Thomas has seen Jesus and believed that he has come back, that he's been resurrected. And next week we'll have another story about more people seeing Jesus after the resurrection. Because we're in the Easter season, so we're in that time where we keep hearing stories about Jesus coming back. I think that's time for a happy face, isn't it? Right, I've got some colouring in and a prayer for you now. Prayer this week is the third of the colour-in prayers that I've sent. You had 2 before Easter, and then this one has come out as an email this week, so hopefully you've got it and you can start colouring it in. And these prayers were written especially for people in exactly the time we're in now, where we're stuck at home, where maybe it's a little confusing. We don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes we're a bit worried. And these prayers help remind us that God is always there, and even if we're not at church or we're not with each other, that he is a link between us. So let's say a prayer, shall we? God of presence and strength, help us feel you here with us when we are anxious and afraid, when the future feels unwieldy and uncertain. We know nothing is unknown to you. O God, we know you are our rock and our comfort in times of trouble. Give us wisdom and courage to make changes that will help things get better. Amen. Have a good week. Remember, we love you, we miss you, and we're looking forward to seeing you back in here. Take care. Bye.